Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good to see you all here tonight. Hope you all had a good Halloween. So what we've got on the study session today are three items. First is the City Council agenda, which we'll cover in depth. The second item is a presentation by First Trion Securities relating to our issuer ratings. And then the last item is an executive session upon my request, reference some parcels. And depending on our time frame, we'll either hit the executive session prior to the City Council meeting or at the end of it, depending on how we're looking. So first, I'll go through the City Council agenda. If it's okay with you, I'm going to skip down to item number 7, which is under Planning and Development. This is an item that had previously been tabled. This specifically pertains and is brought up by the BE Holy Church, reference signs, and this is relative to ordinance number 2020 TAC 18, amending Article 13, signs of the North Augusta Development Code. And so I believe members of the BE Holy Church will be in attendance later this evening to talk about their request for a change to the signed ordinance. And so there'll be a remove from the table and then a motion to consider. So we're happy to talk that through. Libby could probably talk a little bit better than I can. But that's going to be the first item of unfinished business for today on the council. Subject to any questions? We'll move on to number 8.
No, wait a minute. Whoa.
Yes, sir.
Am I the only one, or is there somebody else who'd like to jump in first?
I was going to ask that if Libby could just give us a little background on it, just make sure I understand exactly what they're asking again tonight.
I did the opposite of what I was trying to do there. This text amendment would be to, the request from BE Holy has been to allow electronic reader board signs in a residential district. What has happened is in our sign code currently, it is our reading that electronic reader boards would only be allowed in GC, OC, TC, commercial zoning districts. So the church being an allowed use in a residential district, that does not change their zoning. So the electronic reader board signage would not be allowed in that residential district.
And so I remember that whole corridor is residential. There's no commercial or anything
On the
that.
BE Holy in that area, yes.
There's nothing further down the street or anything like that.
Correct.
And just to clarify, I'm sure I understand this, but this is any residential business can, if passed, would be able to have an electronic reader board, correct? Have an electronic reader board, correct?
Any
Business in a residential district.
non-residential use that is allowed in a residential district would be able to have a reader board sign.
All right.
And this applies to Victory as well. Is that correct?
It would apply to Victory and any other church in a residential district.
Right, because I just know we have been hit up by Victory as well, and they're currently zoned residential.
That is correct.
Okay.
And there are probably several other churches in North Augusta that meet that same criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, anybody else want to? I've thought, we've had a lot of time to think about this. I've thought about it long and hard, and I think it's a puzzling one, and primarily because we are focusing on the zoning of a parcel or an area without consideration of its location. And we have major, our development code identifies arterial, connector, and local streets. Libby told me that the state has different classifications, and I've done my best to find them, Libby, and I didn't, but that's okay. That's a whole other thing. But I think the issue really is not so much the residential part of it as I think it's the location. You're talking, if you want to talk about, it's on, we're talking about, which is, while it may be zoned residential, according to the statistics I found, and this is subject to correction because it's very difficult to find it, is the traffic count on that road somewhere is closely approximate 5 notch, which I guess that's primarily residential as well. Is that correct? 5 notch?
Generally, yes.
So we have what I think are what have become over time major thoroughfares in our city that cause me to really try and think this from a different perspective than residential, but tie it more to location on perhaps an arterial road, that's a wrong choice. I'm not even sure whether 5 notch now is just still a connector, whether it's a local road. It may be approaching arterials in excess of 15,000, I think, and 5 notch is somewhere in excess of 8,000 a day, and Old Edgefield Road, according to the number I saw, was somewhere in excess of 7,000 vehicles a day. So you have hardly what I would consider to be residential streets in the when you compare it, say, to Fulton Street or Robin Road or whatever, places of that nature. So that's where I have trouble with it. And I think that the way to look at this is not so much the zoning, but we ought to look at it in some depth in terms of where the location is and start identifying. We have overlay corridors everywhere in the city that allow certain things or forbid certain things. And so I think that's where I'm conflicted on this because of the specific location. And just one thing, Kevin, before also we have schools that are conditional uses in residential areas. Is that I think that's the correct term.
Allowed, non-residential.
Allowed, okay. But they have to be approved, right? It's not just automatic. And that's not the issue, I guess. I'm sorry, Libby. But, if you want to get word out to somebody in our community, the ideal location for widespread use is on a school reader board if we get to the point where they determine that they want to put them in, and they would not be allowed either for a school to have a reader board. So this is in my mind, a complex issue, and I'll be quiet.
No, Mayor, and I appreciate that, because in reality, that's kind of where my thoughts have been on it. And if this were just about that particular request and that particular location, I don't necessarily, I'm kind of where Fletcher is. I don't like reader boards to begin with. I'm not a fan of them just in general, but this isn't, the Kevin design conversation, and they're allowed in certain uses. So I think that particular thoroughfare probably makes sense. Where I have trouble with this is it's carte blanche, any residential, any allowed use in a residential district. And if there was a way maybe to look at it from a, arterial, however we would do that, I don't have a particular issue with this particular location, or in fact Victory's location, based on where they are and really kind of the transitional areas that those areas are. I just have a really, really difficult time with it, approving it as an allowed use in any residential district. And I think I'm conflicted just as you are, but that's where I'm just having a really, really difficult time supporting this particular request because of for lack of a better word, the universal nature of it.
Let me just say, Fletcher, I've looked at it, and I don't see a way now easily to get where I would like to get from what's before us tonight. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I had a conversation with Ray Peters, who owns AAA Signs, who does the vast majority or a significant portion of commercial signs in the area. back when this first came to us months ago, and I guess Victory had actually asked him to call me because I do a lot of business with him, and his point was to what you two have said. Obviously, I've voiced my opinion. I'm not a fan of reader board signs, but his argument was that many communities will define corridors in which certain types of signs or define sign requirements based on the thoroughfare nature of certain corridors. So he suggested that the city look at that, and maybe that ties into with our whole development code rewrite. Maybe that's something we look at, because I'm in agreement. I'm not in favor of reader board signs, but if you're going to do them, churches like True North and Victory that are on major roads is a little bit different in my mind than churches that are businesses that are on, much different type roads. So,
Mr. Mayor, to add to that, the only bad thing, because you had mentioned something about, North Augusta Middle School being there and, the information there and, the information being displayed. However, even with what you are proposing, that's still going to have losers. We're going to pick one school over another. And look at Hammond Hills. I mean, that nobody's going to convince me that that's not residential. And, there are side entrance to Victory off of Bunning. The Maybaum office is on Bunning. There's another church, the Latter-day Saints or whatever, on Bunning. There's the elementary school, and finally, but not, the pool is down there too. That, when we start trying to fine-tune it, somebody's going to be left out. And I'll reiterate what Kevin and Fletcher said. I'm not a big fan of reader boards either. But I do understand what you're saying. Old Edgefield Road, however, the speed limit is 35. There are a number of houses on that road. Martintown Road, once you pass Bunning, is primarily, residential, with the exception of there's a pest control company at the top of the hill, right across from 4 or 5 houses. I just think the problem is there's no way to dissect it where it's perfect. And it's, I have a hard time supporting this because, again, living in Hammond Hills, or even, for instance, I don't know what the thing is on Georgia Avenue. We have several businesses right through there with houses right beside them. I just don't think there's ever going to be a perfect win-win on any of that. Because if you start saying, well, this street is okay, but this one isn't, we're picking winners and losers. And to me, I just feel like it's either we're going to allow it for all or allow it for none. And I mean, that's just kind of my 2 cents.
And I'd like to say, I'm going to support the motion. First of all, I don't think we can say, well, like y'all are saying, you can have it over here on Martintown Road, but Old Edgefield Road you cannot. I mean, that is not fair at all, no matter if you've a big church, big business, little business. But also, if you've ever had to put up lettering on these signs like all your schools do, first of all, the space is not there. So you can't announce things to your student body or your congregation or whatever because of the signs, and then that hand putting them up, that is way back. And I tell you, I see nothing wrong with the reader board signs. I've gone by, just like the church right across from Belvedere Elementary. If anybody's been there, they've just put one up. Of course, they county, but the signs look nice. To me, they look better than saying, by HE, leave it, the T's fell off somewhere. And so you're sitting there wondering, what in the world they're spelling. So, but I just think, like I said, in this day and age, that's the way not only churches, and like I said, not just churches, but schools or anything, it would just be so much easier on the people than having to go out there and hand put up signs to read and do. And like I said, I see nothing wrong. And another thing with churches, what is one of the main things, and Bob and some of you have been around forever, is to have neighborhood schools and neighborhood churches that people can walk to and see. And I mean, to me, you're going to be in a residential area anyway, but I plan on voting for this, and I just think we're holding people back in their businesses when we say no on this.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just opposite. I think we have regulations in place And until those regulations are changed, then I cannot support this.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody. I will say, Eric, you talked about every business, any business in any residential area, and that's a little stretch in terms of what our development code might allow. I mean, there's certain, if you look at table, what is it, 3-2 or something, lists all the possible uses that I could ever conceive of, and what's allowed in a residential area. Is it, I don't know, the AC and whatever the other, so there's controls on what can go in a residential area. You know, I've said my piece. I think Pat's point is well made. Every school has a sign out in front of it that has, somebody has put letters on it. I mean, every school around, so they're already displaying information. I get if you don't like reader board signs, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that a lot of our schools are zoned P for public use, and that is handled differently.
Well, but back to their point, I mean, Hammond Hills, for instance, is surrounded by residential. If it's zone P, it's still in what I would think you would call a residential neighborhood. You know,
But it could have one. If it's zone P, it still could have one, right?
Currently, city council would make that decision.
just like I guess we're doing now. That's a good point. You know, the zoning classifications get.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. This is an open, you know, we're trying to understand this.
But on that same note, I mean, with what they are asking for, even in your neighborhood, Mr. Mayor, that means Manuel, Davino's, they could put reader boards up if they decided. That's a residential area.
Okay, I hear you.
I mean, it's just, you know, where do you draw the line? I mean, do you want those coming through your neighborhood? And I don't know, Libby, I mean, I'm assuming most of that is residential down there, or mixed use, or whatever it is.
It's in the PD, so it's a slightly special case. Welcome to my world. It's
But
very
you understand what I'm
complicated.
saying. I mean, I'm thinking of businesses in a neighborhood, you know, and that's the way it sounds that we are voting for. And I'm just saying, I mean, there is, you know, where do you draw the line? I mean,
Well, I mean, Eric, I would just say when you say where do you draw the line? You are drawing the line, and that you're saying none. I mean, that's
right.
So I mean,
Okay.
you know, that's fair.
I'm just playing
That's
devil's
fair.
advocate over here because I mean I just think sometimes, you know, you think we're focused on one property on Old Edgefield Road, but if we vote for this, it's not just that one property, it's all of these others that could.
And that was my point early on, is that Crystal Lake is not the same place as
Yeah.
Five Notch
No, and
or
I don't
Old
disagree
Edgefield
with
Road or Martintown Road or Georgia Avenue. I mean, they're totally different,
Exactly.
you know, and that's why I think instead of being, and I don't know how to get there right now tonight, but instead of being zoning related, it'd be road classification, whatever that is. And I'm not an expert on that. I can tell you Libby pointed it out to me today that I didn't really know what I was talking about. She said it much more politely than that.
We can take that back kind of from a study perspective, because obviously we're not going to be able to get you a fully researched answer tonight on arterial versus our non-arterial roads and how that works from a planning perspective. But, you know, as it's currently laid out, Libby, if I'm going to encapsulate this cleanly, which is, hey, it's kind of all or nothing. You're either going to, you know, vote for this to be available for everybody to have use that fits in this condition, or nobody. And so that's going to be really the decision that's before the council this evening. Did I put that clearly? Okay.
Yep, that's, I think, exactly what it is.
And is victory applied, you know, one time when we first was discussing this, Victory Baptist had, and since they on a main road, I mean, have they applied or is that withdrawn?
So they had applied for a sign permit and then had applied to the Board of Zoning Appeals, but since this is a zoning related matter, the Board of Appeals cannot rule in their favor. So they're holding on that until we figure out what's happening with this text amendment. But they haven't
if
applied
we-
for anything further
It-
from there.
But if we vote this down tonight, then they can, no need to apply
Well,
for, like, victory on a major,
I've discussed
Thoroughfare.
some other options with them.
or the digital type.
No, about potentially rezoning,
Mhm.
because there are situations where there are, you know, kind of historically residential districts that have just never been changed. And it may, but that's a whole different, let's not go down that rabbit trail.
Not tonight.
One other point I'd like to make is, and I would agree with what Councilman Dickert said. To me, reader boards are just a distraction. If you're driving along the road, if something is really bright, your eye goes in that direction and it takes you focusing on the road. And as I get older, it's harder and harder to see at night, so, I just don't think that's the appropriate place for it.
All right. Are there any other questions or discussion points from the council this evening on this topic?
Let me ask you one other question. Libby, if this gets voted down tonight, are they then have to wait a year to reapply? Is this that kind of a category?
No, those only apply to my stuff from the planning commission. And the council is certainly within regular motion to send that, to remand it back to the planning commission for further study with specific instructions for what you want us to look at.
Maybe that's a way out. Okay, I appreciate that. If you could write that out for me between now and 7, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Libby.
One more thing, like I said, we just do not, to me, sometimes we've got that reputation, we make things so hard that businesses can't succeed sometimes. And I know we're talking about the reader board signs, but do we really want to make life so hard on people that, I mean, I just think sometimes we need to stop and think on these, and I know everybody's got their own opinion, their own vote, but like I said, we just don't want to tie people down that they can't move forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clifford.
All right, with your permission, sir, we'll press to items number 8 and 9, both under the finance. So item 8 is ordinance number 2020 TAC 28, which is adopting the budget for fiscal year 2021. This will be the final reading of that budget. We've had a few discussions on this already with council and in the previous council meeting. And so if there are any questions reference to the budget, I'll pause here for any questions on that for item number 8. Hearing none, I'll press number 9, which is tied to it, which is ordinance number 2020 TAC 29, levying the annual tax on property in the city of North Augusta. This is a final reading. Again, this has been brought up at previous council meetings, so this would be the final reading for this. Any questions on number 9? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 10, which also has been heard by the council, which is under planning and development, ordinance number 2020 TAC 30, which is to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning approximately 0.45 acres of land owned by Jeffrey S. Martin, Aiken County Tax Parcel 007, TAC 16, TAC 01, TAC 001. This has to do with the, on Martintown Road, the Sprint expansion by annexing a property behind them, and then future plans to expand their business. Again, this is not a new item for the council. This has been discussed before, but this will be the final reading of this ordinance, subject to your questions.
And I'm going to ask again, has the Sprint contacted the neighbor right behind who was really against this?
Well,
I mean,
ma'am, to my understanding, the neighbor that's against it is actually the leasee, the tenant. The landlord that owns the property seems to be in favor of this, but they're renting that property to somebody else.
No, I
and-
mean the house is right behind it. There was one gentleman, Mr. Gillian, Thomas, I believe it's Thomas. I mean, like I said, just to me, out of fairness, talk to these, you know.
We can go back and take a look at that, Councilwoman. I'm not sure that I know I've made personal contact with that individual.
I'm sorry, talking about the owner of Sprint or whoever's doing the property. Because this is an old neighborhood too, that most people have lived there for all their life. You know, it's not like they just moved in, but, I just think out of a courtesy, the company needs to. And I know tonight's final reading is gonna be done with or without our blessings, but just as a courtesy to people who have been there forever.
All right, ma'am. Any other comments on number 10? On item 11, ordinance number 2020 TAC 31, amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning approximately 2.02 acres of land owned by Hardy Land. This has to do with the Five Notch Road townhome complex. And so this again has been brought to council. I think they've made their pitch, and we're here to receive any final questions from the council before we go to final reading.
Jim, this was the one, because I missed the last session, but I think we covered this in the previous study session. This was the one right there on Five Notch Road that was adjacent to like Coretta and that area right there. Ohio, I'm sorry. But yeah, right down there on the right-hand side if you're heading out the city, is that correct?
No, it's on the left-hand side by the car wash, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, the map that I have,
Okay.
sir, is the.
Yeah, okay, I do remember that one now. Okay, I've tried to keep it straight in my head because I know we've had several parcels come up, so, okay, right there behind the car wash, yes. And we covered this a couple of study sessions ago too, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hearing no other questions or any other questions on item 11? Okay, moving to 12, which is finance, which is the ordinance number 2020 TAC 32, ordinance to amend section 15, articles 1 and 5, City of North Augusta Code of Ordinance related to business licenses. This is the final reading. Again, this is related to the fact that the City of North Augusta is going to amend our business license fee structure to be in line with the state of South Carolina. We are, by statute, required to be in this state by January 2022, so we'll have 1 year early, if you will, to be in compliance with the state of South Carolina. And our recommendation is to go forward with this to get us into line here for this year. Any questions on this item? Okay. As we move on to number 13, we'll go to new business. The first item is the something that we've discussed in a study session last session, which was the resolution number 2020 TAC 52, naming the amphitheater in Riverside Village as the Sharon Jones Amphitheater. I know this was a discussion point at the last council study session, so this is coming up here to council this time. And I'll defer to the mayor for any comments or questions on, well, I know he doesn't have any questions, but any comments?
Don't have any.
Anything from the council? Okay. Moving on to number 14 under Parks and Rec and Tourism, Resolution 2020 TAC 53, authorizing funding for the rehabilitation and surfacing of the portions of the Greenway. If my understanding, and I'll look back to Rick to get me out of deep water if I get too deep, which is, this is to pave the Greenway. We do these in thirds, if you will. And so the way we have this currently structured is that we would pass this resolution here in 2020 with funding coming out of both 2020 and 2021 in order to pay for the full length of the 1/3 of the Greenway. We had looked for other opportunities to fund this, potentially with Friends of the Greenway, but based on their charter, they're not doing paving. That's not how they're kind of structured. And so we went back and relooked at the numbers and figured out that we could do this over 2 different fiscal years. And so this would not get actually accomplished until early spring when we have the full financial wherewithal to do so. But this is the way we can do this without having to stutter step the project, so to speak, where we pave a portion of it, have to break it, and then repave it again. or repay, future amount, and that would, number one, not lead to a good-looking segment, if you will, and then this allows us an overall cheaper option as opposed to having to bid this twice. So any questions on number 14? Rick, did I cover that accurately? So for the folks at home, that covers the activity center to the bridge on Mortontown Road.
Just out of curiosity, real quick, Rick, how often since we've done the Greenway, and that was what, 1996, I believe, how many times have we had to, or how often do we have to repave it, just out of curiosity? Oh, okay. So it's basically been intact for 24 years without having to. Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
Any other questions on item 14? Then we'll move to item 15, new business, resolution 2020 TAC 54, accepting a deed of dedication for the streets water distribution system, sanitary sewer, and associated easements and rights of way, along with a maintenance guarantee and letter of credit for Hammond's Ferry Phase A4. So again, this is a routine action of developer turning over the deed to the city. Any questions on this item? Moving on to number 16, also under planning and development. This is a planning commission recommendation memorandum number 20 TAC 030 and project staff report RZT 20 TAC 003, special exceptions in neighborhood preservation overlay, receipt of information by council. And so ultimately what this is seeking to get is approval for special exceptions to be handled by the BZA.
What would be an exception?
I'm going to turn right to Libby.
Apple.
So this would specifically be for the neighborhood preservation overlay. Currently, all special exceptions are prohibited in that section.
They what, Libby? I'm sorry.
All of the special exceptions are prohibited in the neighborhood preservation overlay. So this would allow the BZA to hear them as any other special exception. A few of those would be bed and breakfasts, telecommunications towers is one. I don't see any applications for those. There are several more. They're outlined in the staff report. There's actually a full list of everything that could possibly be allowed. And some of it depends on the zoning, the underlying zoning as well.
And this is receiving it from information, we get to look at it, discuss it later, correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
And then on to number 17, the annexation, ordinance number 2020 TAC 33. I won't read this whole piece because it has been tabled at the request of the petitioners.
Well, we will table it at the request of the petitioners. Right, I mean, we have to do that, right? Since it's on the agenda now, we have to take formal action to table it. So we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
But the requester has asked that it be tabled for, I don't know what reason, but, so we can do that.
And then I'll have no administrative reports, and then that'll go through basically the meat of the agenda for the city council meeting. So that covers item number 1 in the study session for tonight. And with that, I would like to move to item number 2.
By all means.
And I'll defer to Walter.
Great, and I think I have a PowerPoint presentation that's coming up. Nice to be with you, Mayor.
Good to see you.
Hopefully everybody can see that in front of them. Cammie asked me to come to share with you, as you recall, the installment purchase revenue bonds that we issued to fund all the projects along the river have a credit rating issued by Moody's. There are 3 rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. Moody's is the only one that rates those bonds. So the bonds themselves have a credit rating. Think about that sort of like you or I have a credit score. The higher, the better. So Moody's once a year comes back in and looks at those bonds and can take one of three actions. They can upgrade the rating, improve it. They can affirm it, leave it where it is, or they can downgrade it. They affirmed the rating on those bonds, which is exactly what we wanted and what we expected. Moody's has a second rating that on you all, what is called an issuer credit rating. Doesn't apply to any bonds. On that one, they lowered your credit rating by one notch, and so I wanted to take you through that, talk to you a little bit about why they did that, sort of the factors that look at that, just to explain it to you. So I've got a lot of information, which I won't go through every slide. I'll leave it with you just for information purposes, if that works. So if we can go to the next slide. The observations that they had, there are really three factors that came into play. The first is your fund balance levels, so think about that as in terms of your savings that you have, are pretty low compared to peer-sized cities. So that's the first factor. The second is you have a good bit of debt relative to other peer-sized cities, primarily because you'll recall the debt that we issued for the projects on the river. A portion of that is paid for by the county and the school district through the TIF obligation. Moody's doesn't back that out. So you would look at that and say, well, while yes, the city issued all of the debt, there's a significant portion of it that you're using school district and county revenues to pay. From Moody's perspective, that's your debt. So it looks like you have a lot of debt relative to your peers. So debt burden is the second thing. And then the third thing is coronavirus. As you might expect, you, along with a lot of other cities, are facing headwinds in terms of things like hospitality tax revenues, accommodation fee revenues, parking revenues. So those three things are what led Moody's to lower your issuer credit rating. If we can go to the next slide. They cited some credit strengths and credit weaknesses. And let me, if we can go to the next slide, I think this might even show it better. So the tachometer on the right side shows you sort of the rating scale that Moody's has. So AAA is the absolute best rating that you can have. That's like a Greenville, Charleston, I think, are maybe the only two cities in South Carolina with the AAA. Then there's AA. You were at the bottom end of AA before last week, and then single A, you're now at the top end of single A. And then there's what they call BAA. Other people would refer to that as triple B. And then anything below that line to the left is non-investment grade. So still a very good credit rating at the A1, top end of the A range. If we can go to the next slide. There are a variety of factors listed in that table on the bottom left that Moody's looks at. They take a pretty rigid scorecard approach to this. And to show you sort of how you, and they apply a weighting out to the right to each of those, but your finances, things like your fund balance and your cash balance, you can see are about 30% of your credit rating. And then your debt levels also make up a significant portion of your credit rating. The top factor, that economic tax base, Moody's looks at the assessed value within the city. Their sort of view is the bigger the boat, the bigger the waves you can take on. So the bigger your tax base, the stronger you'll be. So there's really nothing you can do about your tax base. They call it full value, but that's assessed value per capita. There's nothing you can do about that. And your wealth levels, your per capita, your median family income, there's nothing that you can do about that as a city. So there are 30% of those that are sort of baked before you even come to the scorecard. The management factor, the institutional framework that is 10%, they assign. That has to do with your ability to raise taxes. So think about in South Carolina, Act 388 limits your ability. So they assign an institutional framework to every city in the state that's the same. So everybody in South Carolina gets the same institutional framework. And then your operating history is your ability for revenues to exceed expenditures each year. So it's a variety of factors, some within your control, some are without, not in your control. If you'll go to the next slide, in fact, we can skip that one in the interest of time. This one is probably the one that will interest you the most. There's a little, bug, if you will, is what I call it, that shows where on each of those factors you rate. What you'd like to see is the little white mark as far to the right towards the AAA as possible. So if you look up at the top and sort of let your eyes scroll down, you'll see that on most of these factors, you're between A and AA is where you line up. So that assessed value, taxable assessed value, for example, you're right between the A and the AA, the very top. The full value per capita, you fall into the AA category. Median family income, you're right between A. So if you let your eyes scroll down, really when might make it easier for folks to hear me. Um, and so the ones that my eye goes to are the fund balance trend over the last 5 years. So that one you can see is one of your lower ones where you're at the bottom end of the A category. And then if you'll jump all the way down to the debt, debt to full value and debt to revenue. So again, that's where they're dinging you, if you will, for having a good bit of debt. They don't, again, back out the school district and county portion of that. So your rating falls right between the A and the double A. In years past, they have kept you at the double A, and I think because of coronavirus and the challenges this year, they moved you to the top end of the A range. I have some clients that say, well, we really want our rating to go up every year, and if you're in that camp, I would say increasing your fund balance every year is what you would need to do to improve that credit rating. Over time, as the debt pays off, it'll also improve. And for some of my clients, that is really important. Greenville and Charleston take tremendous pride in being a AAA, and they've built up their fund balance to significant levels. I have other clients who take the position, that's the people's money, and we want to have enough fund balance to get through the year and manage our finances, but we don't want to collect more money than we need to and build it up into fund balance. We'd rather give it back to the people. I'm not suggesting there's a definitive right or wrong answer. The rating agencies look at this from the bond investor's perspective, so they're not necessarily looking at it from your perspective, so you shouldn't manage to a particular credit rating. As a finance person, I will tell you I would love for all of my clients to be AAA. I would love to see my clients build up greater and greater fund balance, and so that's sort of the bias that I bring to the discussion. But I also recognize that for some clients, they say that's just strategically not where we want to be, or right now is not the environment to set our revenues at such a level that we're intentionally just generating a larger and larger fund balance. Maybe it's a long-term goal, but not achievable in the near term.
Walter, when you're saying fund balance, you're talking capital projects fund, is that?
Good question, Mayor. So your fund balance is from Moody's perspective, they don't have a definitive definition, but it's all of the available money that you have that's unrestricted money added together. So they actually take, in your case, you have a policy that anything above 15% in your fund balance, you transfer to your capital projects fund. And it sits there. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've spent it on capital projects. It's there to spend. From Moody's perspective, they would rather see you set that policy at maybe anything greater than 20% you transfer over. And we did point out to them that once you transfer it, the money is sitting there. You can just as easily transfer it back. And so they did add that in, but they would like to see, to be in the high AA or AAA, they would like to see your fund balance up closer to 30%. So a pretty significant increase in fund balance level. Did that answer your question, Mayor?
I'm sure it did to those that know what's going on, but I mean, I get the sense of it.
Okay. I've got other slides that I just wanted to leave with you that show sort of where you've been historically and more definitions, which I did not plan to go through. But again, sort of the key three takeaways would be your fund balance level looks lower, that's your savings level. Your debt burdens look higher, and then we're battling coronavirus, which is pretty similar. There is a page in the back, and I'm sorry, since I can't scroll, that's it right there. Page 12, if we could go to that. One more, please. There we go. Just some sort of sector-wide things that are going on. Moody's has put all of the sectors at rate, so healthcare, education, general government, everything except housing and electric and water utilities on negative outlook, meaning that there's a greater chance of downgrade in the next 12 to 24 months because of COVID. This was also the second quarter of this year was the first time that Moody's has had more downgrades than upgrades. So as you might expect, the rating agencies are taking a pretty pessimistic view of the impact on the pandemic on the finances of local governments. S&P, another one of the rating agencies, put a negative outlook on 1,500 different local government entities across the country. So you're not alone in this situation. And again, the bonds that you have that are rated, they affirmed the rating on. So they did not change the rating on those bonds. So, Mayor, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Mr. Mayor, and Walter, it's good to see you again. Appreciate you coming today. I guess in a nutshell, what does this mean for the citizens of North Augusta. When you're saying we've affirmed, it sounds like this has no impacts on our bonds that are currently issued.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
This only impacts us if we wish to go get new bonds.
That's correct. New bonds in the public markets, which you don't have any plans to. So from a practical standpoint, there's absolutely no impact on the citizens.
Right, and I don't think we have any, unless staff knows of any, I don't think we're looking to borrow money anytime soon. So
Right.
we've already issued the bond for public safety headquarters, so it has no impact there either.
That's
So-
correct.
So
That's correct.
I guess if I'm trying to weed through what you're saying, if maybe we need to try to look at potentially setting aside a little additional money plus just weather the storm of coronavirus, and more than likely we'll be upgraded.
That's exactly correct. And the main thing, the reason I'm here today, I didn't want someone to hear about this and think that it impacted the bonds that you issued or that there was a negative impact. So this may be oversharing information, but we wanted you to have all of the information.
Okay, thank you, Walter.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Before you run, I'll just say from, the discussions we had earlier in the year, I think the opportunity for our capital projects fund is something that we need to look at. I think certainly this year would have been the year if it had not been a COVID year, but COVID certainly has it not only impacted us, but has impacted a lot of our citizens negatively, and in that regard, I think the approach we took ultimately to defer any opportunity to increase the millage rate was certainly the right one, without a question, because we've got to be considerate of the citizens, and that's. I think there's a lot of people that are struggling the very way we are in terms of the demands and opportunities to expand services and maybe purchase properties, or we've got things down the road where we're going to need additional facilities. We just need to keep them in the forefront, so that when the timing is right, and hopefully 2022 we'll be out of this, or at least have a control on the coronavirus thing, that we can look at it intelligently with appropriate input and help our fund balance become more solid. And I think separately, the other good thing is that each of the bonds that we talk about, the 2017 Bs for Riverside Village and the bonds for the public safety headquarters, have designated revenue streams to pay those bond payments. Of course, having a designated revenue stream doesn't always mean the revenue stream is going to be what you hoped it would be, but here thus far we've been in reasonably good shape. So, I remain optimistic. Thanks. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Walter, for coming down and making that presentation. That's been very, very beneficial and helpful to get the right word out, and quickly too. So that's great.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council, my recommendation as we move into item 3 for executive session is that we postpone that until after the council meeting, because I've got the 6:52 p.m. right now. By the time we would adjourn and go to that, it really wouldn't give us any time. So in order for us to start on time at 7 p.m. for the citizens' recommendation as we do this after the council meeting this evening.
Yeah, I move we recess the
Second.
study session. Was that you, Eric?
Yes, sir.
Second. All in favor? Okay, we'll stand in recess, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for the council meeting. Thank you. Apologize for being a couple minutes late calling this meeting to order. I'd ask you to stand for the invocation and the pledge. Dear God, we're thankful for the fall season. We're thankful for the full moon. They're helpful to us in these times of stress and anxiety to recognize the beauty that's around us. The challenges being faced across this nation from natural forces are so diverse and seemingly unending. Tomorrow is Election Day, and we certainly pray that there's harmony across our nation, locally and in our state, during and after polling times. We ask you to provide wisdom to this council as it serves the residents of this city of North Augusta, and this council specifically often dealing with tough issues affecting the future of this city. We're so grateful for the men and women working in city government, providing quality service under unbelievably difficult circumstances at times. And above all else, we pray that they remain healthy and safe in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let the roll reflect that all council members are present tonight. Council, you've received the study session and council meeting minutes of October 19th and the minutes of the public hearing for the proposed annual consolidated budget for fiscal year 2021 of October 29th, 2020. They'll stand approved as provided unless there are comments, corrections, or additions. Hearing none, they're approved. Now we have two presentations tonight. First is from the Hometown Hero Banner Project. If you would want to come down and do that while I look for it. And then after that, we will have the presentation of the proclamation of National American Indian Heritage Month.
So my name is Lowell Coppert. I'm the chairman of the Aiken County Veterans Council. With me is Linda Caldwell, who is our treasurer of the Aiken County Veterans Council. Those of you who may not know, Aiken County is made up of roughly 18 to 20,000 veterans that call Aiken County home. So we do have a tremendous amount of veterans. You know, you think of North Augusta and Aiken kind of being small towns. Aiken County obviously is a large footprint, but roughly 18,000 to 20,000 veterans make up Aiken County. As we know of right now, one of them standing to my left, your mayor, city administrator, Mr. Clifford is a retired veteran. I know Mr. McGee is a veteran as well. The reason that we're here this evening is, if you haven't noticed, there's banners up and down Georgia Avenue right now. They actually went up this afternoon with the help of Mr. Rick Meyer. So we wanted to come just briefly talk about those banners, but more so, I know you guys probably, this hasn't been a good year for politicians, I would say, getting beat up left and right over COVID, but we wanted to come and thank you guys for all the stuff that you've done last year with the banner program, making it happen here in North Augusta, and what you guys are continuing to do with the banner program, but also just the stuff that you guys do for veterans as a whole. So we wanted to come and say thank you. We've got some certificates that we'd like to pass out. I'll give those to Linda. She can pass them around. The banner program started through Miss Linda Caldwell, who's standing here next to me. She's a Vietnam veteran herself, served in Vietnam as a nurse, was a captain in the United States Army. She went up to New Jersey for a visit with some family members, saw the program there. Essentially what it is it's banners. Like I said, if you leave here and you go down George Avenue, you'll see them on your way out of here. They're in North Augusta, and they're also up in Aiken. It's $75 to have your picture up on that banner. They go up twice a year. They're up right now through, when do they come down, Linda? So they'll be up until December 1st, and then they go back up again the middle of May through the 4th of July. Essentially, it's just a way to honor people here in Aiken County that are veterans, thanking them for their service and what they did for this community, what they've done for this country. Again, $75 is a one-time fee that's paid to the Aiken County Veterans Council. We have them printed. We take care of putting them up and down with the assistance of city administrators. We're looking to expand the program. Right now there's 68 in Aiken, and what do we got over here, Linda? 38. So we started the program last year. They went up right before Veterans Day, then they went back up again earlier this year during May. I know everybody was kind of in the heart of the COVID thing, so you may have seen them, you may not have, depending on what was going on. But they just went back up again today, and they'll be back up until December 1st. So again, we just wanted to come and thank you guys personally for the stuff that you guys have done. Like I said, not just for the banner program, but veterans as a whole. So if you have any questions or you'd like to get more information about the banners, you can go to aikencountyveterans.org, and that's the council's website.
I want to thank you, particularly Linda. Our conversations were early on in providing the impetus for this program. You know, there's a lot of veterans in our city who are, including Don Rhodes, I see in the back, he raised his hand. But there's a number of them that have already died, and their families thought enough of them to find a picture of them in uniform and have it on the banner as a means of honoring them. So, you know, it's important for a lot of our veterans who've served far earlier than I did and served this country. And if we can figure out a way to honor those individuals, and this is a good way to put their picture up where people can know that they served, that's a great program. We certainly appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, there you are. Dr. Spence is going to come up and from the DAR. I have a proclamation which I would like to read, if I may, and then present it to you. It's Proclamation National American Indian Heritage Month, whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976, and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George H.W. Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historic activities have been planned. Now therefore, I, Robert Pettit, do hereby proclaim November 2020 as National American Indian Heritage Month in this city. And we urge all the citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. And I appreciate the DAR for leading this. You want to stand over here so we don't have the microphone if you want to take a picture.
National, state, and local DAR, really one of the earliest women's organization, have respected the Native Americans since many, many years, but it was officially in the 1970s that we started this proclamation. And I'm just honored that we can teach, educate the children, and our goal is to give scholarships to Native American, Native American children, and the organization just reaches out. But education is one of our biggest, is to remember our Native people. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate people in the community at all levels that are involved in supporting causes that recognize, in this case tonight, our veterans and also our American Indian heritage. So that's great. I appreciate that. Okay, moving on to item number 7. This is ordinance number 2020-18, amending Article 13, signs of the North Augusta Development Code, Chapter 18 of the City of North Augusta, South Carolina Code of Ordinances. This would be the first reading and the motion to remove to the table, but I'd like to request that this item not be removed from the table tonight. As we discussed, I think if we return it to the Planning Commission for further review, specifically regarding electronic signs, classification by using road classification as a means rather than simply zoning, and to look at it to figure out where we might more appropriately locate electric reader board signs. I know some are opposed to them unilaterally, but put it on their agenda for the next meeting in December. So, having said that, there's not a motion to remove from the table tonight. Is that correct? I don't hear any. Okay, the item remains on the table. We'll move on now to item number 8, which is ordinance number 2020-28, adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2021, containing estimates of proposed revenues and expenditures by the City of North Augusta, South Carolina, for the budget year beginning January 1st, 2021, and declaring that same shall constitute the budget of the City of North Augusta for such budget year. Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on final reading?
So moved.
Ms. Carpenter, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Presnell? This is the final reading of the budget. Are there any comments from citizens regarding the budget? Council, any further additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0, thank you. Moving on, item 9, ordinance number 2020-29, levying the annual tax on property in the City of North Augusta, South Carolina, for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021, and ending December 31st, 2021. Do I have a final reading?
So moved.
Mr. Dickert, Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Correct, second. If I'm correct, and Cammie, if I get off track, the millage rate, the total millage rate remains the same at 73.5, with 1.5 mils of that going to the Capital Projects Fund. So it's an unchanged millage rate for this year. Any comments from citizens? Council? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10. It's ordinance number 2020-30 to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning plus or minus 0.45 acres of land owned by Jeffrey S. Martin, Aiken County tax parcel number 007-16-01-001. This is at 1132 Francis Street, from R10 medium lot single family residential to GC general commercial. Do I have a the chair will move to adopt on final reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
No? This is a parcel, okay, there it's shown on the map before you. Just one lot removed from the intersection of Martintown Road and Atomic Boulevard, kind of behind the gas station. Any comments from citizens? Council?
Nothing other than I'll be recusing myself as I did on the first reading, Mr. Mayor.
I think I need another form.
I gave it.
You gave it to her?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Any comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? The vote is 6-0, with Mr. Toole recusing himself. Item number 11, also under Planning and Development. This is ordinance number 2020-31 to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning plus or minus 2.02 acres of land owned by Hardy Land LLC, Aiken County tax parcel number 005-19-06-005 from PD Plan Development to R5 Mixed Residential. Final reading.
So moved.
Mr. Toole, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Brooks? Libby, if I may, I'll just go ahead and continue. This is out on Five Notch Road, very near the intersection with Pisgah, down Five Notch toward Georgia Avenue from the Pisgah intersection, and it's planned to be, I guess not mixed residential townhouses. Is that right? It's currently vacant lot. Any comments from citizens on this? Council? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to item number 12. Item number 12, ordinance number 2020-32, an ordinance to amend Section 15, Articles 1 and 5 of the City of North Augusta Code of Ordinances related to business licenses. Do I have a motion to adopt on final reading? Mr. Dickert, the
Second.
chair will second. Sorry, Kevin. Should I take a shot at this too?
Mr. Mayor, what I'll do is I'll try to cover this. So this is, again, in line with the state of South Carolina's recent change that they're going to put this into law or have put it into law. So this is effective January of 2022. This puts us into line with the state way of doing business. We have a year to kind of absorb it, see where we go from there. But bottom line is this is a recommended item from the staff so that we can be in line with the rest of the state of South Carolina as this moves forward into statute.
Thank you, and we'll be actually in compliance a year earlier than is required. But we have really I guess our only option is the choice of timing, not content.
That's correct, sir.
Any comments from citizens? Council? Hearing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item number 13. Item number 13, under Parks, Rec, and Tourism, resolution number 2020-52, naming the amphitheater in Riverside Village as the Sharon Jones Amphitheater. Excuse me for a moment of clarification. The chair moves to adopt this.
Second.
Age before beauty, let Kevin go.
Okay, Kevin, thank you.
Sure.
It's been pointed out to me that the resolution is deficient in one aspect, in that if you read the last, be it further resolved, it reads, be it further resolved, funding for the above signage and plaques shall come from the Capital Projects Fund in an amount not to exceed $10,000. So I move that we amend the resolution by adding the words after Capital Projects Fund in an amount not to exceed $10,000.
I'll second that.
Mr. Dickert seconds. Any discussion from citizens on this? Well, this is on the amendment to revise it by adding an amount. Comments on the resolution itself will be later. Thank you. Any comments from citizens on this specific wording we just added as an amendment? Council? It's certainly a start.
They would have to,
And you know, I don't know.
I think that amount, based on plaques that I have bought for City of Augusta projects, that will buy you a couple.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on how far you want to go and how big and elaborate, but I would agree with the mayor that it's a good start.
And I think as we get a little bit
And
more.
it may be plenty sufficient, just
Okay.
depends on.
Rachel's the one that pointed this out to me, so.
I back up what Fletcher said and checked with Rick. It's more than enough for a simple plaque, but based on the guidance and discussion that you all had last time, you were looking for more than just signage of the name of the amphitheater and maybe some historical context, some description of her life and her achievements to make it a little bit more of an educational. The word interactive comes to mind, but it won't be interactive. So the amount that we've provided would be more than enough for the name plaque plus some historical context.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hold you to it.
Oh, man. It was Rick's fault.
Thank you, Rachel, for that. I'll have forgotten by tomorrow morning, so no, you don't have to worry. Any other comments from council? I appreciate the input. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, it's unanimous. Now, we'll call the question on approving the resolution, the amended resolution. Yes. And we get yes, right.
Can I ask that we have the resolution read?
Certainly. I'll attempt to do it. It's resolution number 2020-52, naming the amphitheater in Riverside Village as the Sharon Jones Amphitheater. Whereas the late great singer Sharon Jones lived her early years in North Augusta, as a child first displayed her singing talent in a North Augusta Baptist Church Christmas play as a singing angel, and became a resident of North Augusta in her final years. And whereas Sharon Jones' extraordinary talent was finally recognized at age 40 while singing professionally in the New York City area. And whereas Sharon Jones was the lead singer for the soul band, the Dap Kings, for 20 years. And whereas Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings sparked the soul music revival, defined the sound of modern soul, and received a Grammy nomination for their album, Give the People What They Want. And whereas Sharon was widely acclaimed as the female James Brown, and her dynamic performances and sensational albums made her a fan favorite around the world. And whereas Sharon's battle with pancreatic cancer, which ultimately took her life in 2016 at age 60, was the subject of the inspirational 2016 documentary Miss Sharon Jones by the two-time Academy Award-winning filmmaker Barbara Koppel. And whereas the amphitheater in Riverside Village was envisioned as a venue for vocal and instrumental concerts by local and national performers. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and City Council of the City of North Augusta, South Carolina, in meeting duly assembled and by the authority thereof, the Riverside Village Amphitheater shall be named the Sharon Jones Amphitheater. And be it further resolved that the city administrator is directed to have appropriate signage designed, manufactured, and erected, identifying the amphitheater as the Sharon Jones Amphitheater, and to prepare one or more plaques highlighting the life, career, and accomplishments of Sharon Jones and prominently display same at appropriate location. And be it further resolved, funding for the above signage and the plaques shall come from the Capital Projects Fund in an amount not to exceed $10,000, done, ratified, and adopted this day. And et cetera. I'll close there. So that, I read the resolution as amended. Are there any comments from citizens tonight on this? If you'd raise your hand, I'll start with Ryan, then I'll go to the back. I would ask you, and I didn't read it earlier on, I should have, so out of habit of having meetings in person, if you could limit your comments to 5 minutes, please, that would be appreciated.
That will not be an issue with me, Mayor. Thank you.
It applies to everybody. Thank you.
Cool. Ryan Abel, 37 Fox Creek Drive, Wintry, North Augusta, South Carolina. And for those who care, it is not in city limits. Sharon Jones is a dear friend that I was lucky enough to meet late in her life. I think that the resolution did an amazing job of encompassing her talent and her skills and her accolades. I think it's unmatched by anyone in the city of North Augusta. And I'm extremely excited as someone who's had the beautiful opportunity to perform with her on a stage, on the Miss Sharon Jones stage at the Imperial Theater in Augusta, Georgia. This is something that has been a dream come true for me personally, and I have a fellow band member, Zach Swinson from Number 9, here with me tonight. Ed Turner sends his love. We've played in this room. That was an interesting event. But Sharon was so much more than a singer, so much more than a performer. She was that, but she was so much more, incredibly kind and caring. And I don't have to sell it to you guys, and lady, but man, what a great day for the city of North Augusta if this does pass. You're talking major acts that will consider coming here for an event on the, when we kick it off and make it real deal. Her impact in music, not only locally but worldwide, is unmatched by anyone from North Augusta, and probably only second to James Brown in the area. So kudos, thank you, and yeah, let's do this thing. Thursday night sold out, Rick. That's what I'm talking about. Sharon Jones Amphitheater.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes. No, I'd like you to come down. We've been down that road before, and it's a road we'd like not to travel.
Public wants to hear you.
Just state your name and address if you would.
My name is Don Rhodes, and I live in Crestland subdivision, McKenzie Court. I have for 25 years. I love North Augusta. I've served on many historical groups. Sharon loved North Augusta. I can't tell you how much. In March of 2011, she moved here, and I didn't know who she was. She didn't know who I was, and we became fishing buddies. And over the time, she just loved being a part of this area. She just did so many good things. I've got a blood pressure pills that cost, let me see if I can do this. How do you undo this? Let me just hold on to something here. But anyway, Sharon she loved the area, and she when she was here, this was her refuge. She loved coming back here. She liked being a star around the world. She went to all the major cities of the world. She sold out. She sold out the Apollo Theater 3 times. But she loved coming back here because she could be herself. She could go to Family Dollar. She could go to the Waffle House. She loved this thing. And she loved the way people work. When she first came here, I taught her in joining the North Augusta Activity Center with me, and we would walk the track around the top. She loved it, and she loved that the people didn't know. They would ask, I'd say, well, Sharon Jones sings, she sings professionally, and they say, well, where do you sing around here? And I'd say, no, she travels the world singing. And wherever she went, she would tell people she was from North Augusta. Sharon Jones was born in the storage room of the black section of University Hospital because they didn't have a room for her mother. And when she was born here, she was living in this section called Blue Heaven down here on. The lady up there on the top is Sharon's sister, Willa Jones Stringer. And Willa and her husband Sam over there, they live on Bradleyville Road. And Willa will tell you that when she was 3 years old when Sharon was born, and they were living right in that Blue Heaven area off Jackson Avenue. Sharon first sang publicly in a Christmas play at the little church on Jackson Avenue. And when Sharon Jones decided to move her mother, she lived in Queens for 50 years. And when she wanted to she wanted to get her mother out of the housing projects, and she wanted to move her mother and her sister Dora back down here, where her mother could spend her last years in North Augusta. And she bought that yellow brick house on Jackson Avenue, and she loved being part of this community. She got her hair done at that African braid place on Martintown Road. There was a lady, the wife of a pastor in town here, who made her stage costumes. She just loved it. And I can tell you the biggest thing about naming this amphitheater after Sharon is that it's going to bring so much, not just local attention, not just state attention, but worldwide attention to this town. And I know it because of 2 things that have happened to me recently. This afternoon, I had an email message from David Brown, the senior writer for Rolling Stone magazine. And he wants me to email him tonight to say whether or not y'all name this amphitheater after Sharon, because he's going to put it in Rolling Stone magazine. He's already called Mayor Pettit twice to talk about this. I can also tell you that Viola Davis, who's probably the hottest actress in the world right now, she was in The Help. She just is in this movie about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. She and her husband have a film production company in Los Angeles, and they are right now in production with a movie about Sharon, with Viola Davis going to play Sharon. They contacted me over a year ago on this. And her husband, Julius Tennant, who's an actor himself, has emailed me several times, called me. And so you got, and y'all haven't even approved it yet. And already it's got this huge attention. Right after Sharon moved to North Augusta, just a few months later, she was on stage with Prince in Paris, France, and then she was with him at Madison Square Garden. She opened for. Just traveled the world. She was with John Legend at the Madison Square Garden and the Kennedy Center, Michael Bublé on Saturday Night Live, and I'm wrapping it up. But anyway, I think it's going to be a wonderful thing, and I think that y'all going to see that it's going to bring so much attention to North Augusta. And my friend up there, Millage Murray, who's the past president of the Heritage Council, he wants to say something, right, Millage? All right, come on.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
Anyway, thank y'all very much. And
I appreciate it.
Sharon would be very honored. And since tomorrow's President's Day, Willa actually knew Shirley Chisholm in Queens, and she sang at Shirley Chisholm's rallies, and Shirley Chisholm played piano for her.
You're stealing time quite skillfully, I might add.
Thank you, Sharon. The other Sharon.
My name's Millage Murray, and I'm a citizen of North Augusta. I live at 1202 West Avenue. This is such a positive thing that you're doing for Sharon Jones, but as well for the city of North Augusta. Sharon had a voice that will continue to live on, just as James Brown's voice lives on. I have seen Sharon's voice used in Lincoln national commercials, and I think you will see that to continue. I just want to thank everybody, and especially the kind words that Ryan said and Don Rhodes said on her behalf, and I do want to commend you for this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Council?
I don't know what I can add to anything anybody already said, other than when I first heard this proposed several years ago, I thought it was a good idea, and nothing has changed my mind since then. I think it's an honor for Miss Jones and her family for sure, but I also think it's an honor for North Augusta to be able to claim her and to honor her in that manner. So I certainly support it. As Ryan said, I don't know if we're going to have a performing arts amphitheater, I just can't imagine who else could be better represented by having it named after them.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Fletcher first, and you,
Oh,
Eric. I'm sorry. I looked this way out of habit for some reason.
I'm with Eric. I'm not going to rehash everything that's said, but
That's Kevin.
I'm Eric.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
But something Ryan made a post about this, and someone commented on Ryan Abel's post, and I just wanted to read it and leave it at that because I thought it was very well said. It was by Rob Smith. He said, "She loved North Augusta and fishing and the water, and of course performing. What a perfect place to bring all those things together and honor her."
Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much I can add to this, but as a parent who has a child that loves music, is going to college to be a music teacher, I think this is good in the fact that, even though she is not with us, I have a feeling her music will inspire the next generation. When I grew up in the 80s, we were hearing old James Brown stuff sampled by new artists. And I thought it was really kind of cool. I didn't know a whole lot about her. I actually took some time, Ryan, listened to a couple of things, and I'm like, wow, it was spot on with the female James Brown. So it is exciting that we have a venue now that hopefully generations to come will be able to enjoy and perhaps perform in, one day. And So I'm excited about this as much as everybody else.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say, I never had the privilege and honor of knowing this young lady from North Augusta, but Ryan, Mr. Rhodes, Millage, thank you for speaking, and it makes me excited to know we've got someone of her caliber that we can name something out, and her family, thank you, and for her life. She just sounds like a wonderful, wonderful person. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I'm so excited about this opportunity to recognize Ms. Jones in this manner, and I think that the city is honored to be able to do this, and hopefully that the family members will appreciate it. And I also want to say that, the African American community is now going to be recognized in a manner unlike any other in the city of North Augusta. This is going to be worldwide recognition. So I believe that this is just a great thing for the whole community in general, and I'm excited for more concerts and everything else that's going to be able to go down there, and looking forward to being able to have the recognition as far as a plaque or whatever we end up doing, so people will really go down there and read the history of Miss Jones.
I too agree that with David that it's a grandiose opportunity for North Augusta to move forward in a very positive manner, and I do commend the family. Thank y'all for coming tonight, and Mr. Rhodes, and all the work that's been done to bring it to this point, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, and I know, Council, you received an email today with an alternative proposal and additional consideration. I won't go into any further discussion of it, except you've had an opportunity to consider it before the vote, and obviously, from a personal standpoint, music is about the furthest thing from my abilities, but to have an opportunity to recognize obviously a phenomenal talent, and to be quite honest, the part of this whole thing that has struck me the most was when I looked at the and it was in the Don Rhodes extract from the video we showed at the study session, where she said that that North Augusta treated her poorly as a child, and how much it had changed. And I think that speaks volumes for North Augusta to have changed that dramatically and recognize the value of people and individuals, regardless of race, religion, and we continue to make those strides. And of all the things that was said, that was the thing that most impacted me, and I just hope that, and I believe the city will continue to grow in that regard. So, anybody have any last thoughts? If not,
I was just going to say, I'm assuming that we'll do some kind of committee or group or research, or how we'll come about what we end up doing as far as a designation, plaque, or whatever, dedication.
as a matter of fact, Councilman, I think you're exactly the right person to lead that effort.
Don't ever speak up.
Basically, he just looked at you and said, "Not it."
No, I think that's a good idea, and we have valuable resource here. Mr. Rhodes knows extensively, and knew her well, and there's a lot written. And to be honest, I also got an email from David Brown again today saying, hey, as soon as it happens, how will I know? So he's interested, and if you want to know the words in the resolution where it says the late great singer is from an email that he sent me, so I plagiarized them. So, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, item number 14. Thank you all for your attendance tonight and participation, and I personally am elated. Thank you. Item number 14, resolution number 2020-53, authorizing funding for the rehabilitation and resurfacing of portions of the Greenway. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
I have no.
Second.
Oh, Fletcher? Bob? Okay, I'm sorry. Bob made the motion to approve. Eric, the second. Who's, Jim, are you going to talk about this?
So we're discussing the study session. This is allocating $100,000 to resurface and repave a portion of the Greenway. Really what we're talking about is a third, and that ends up coming from the activity center up to the bridge over Martintown Road, and that this would be let in 2020 as far as initial funding, but would not actually be executed until 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from citizens? Citizen? But down to one. Council? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 15, resolution number 2020-54, accepting a deed of dedication for the streets, water distribution system, sanitary sewer, and associated easements and rights of way, along with a maintenance guarantee and letter of credit for Hammond's Ferry Phase A4. Do I have a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McGee? You guys are jumping in before I get my ears tuned to listen.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, there's a routine action for moving a deed from HF Developers LLC within Hammond's Ferry Phase A4, such that the city will take possession of that as a deed action.
Okay. Any comments from the gentleman in attendance? Council? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Maybe we should put the good stuff at the end next time so they stick around.
No. To be quite honest with you, that's annoyed the devil out of me when that happens to people who have to sit around for a 2-minute thing. Item number 16, Planning Commission recommendations, memorandum number 20-030, and project staff report RZT 20-003, special exceptions in neighborhood preservation overlay. This is providing receipt of information by council without objection. The Planning Commission recommendation is accepted for information. Okay, moving on to item number 17, ordinance number 2020-33, to change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by accepting the petition requesting annexation by the landowners and annexing plus or minus 14.3 acres of property located along Edgefield Road and owned by Joe M. Pinner, Norman M. Pate, and Joseph H. Pate. The chair moves to table this ordinance on the request of the applicant. Mr. Toole, this is a non-discussionable motion. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item number 18, administrative reports. Mr. Administrator or Ms. Assistant Administrator, do you have anything for us tonight?
Rachel does everything, and I have no administrative reports for the council this evening.
Okay, thank you.
I stand corrected.
Wanted to make sure that we recognize the successful drive boo trick or treat that was held on Friday. Over 500 cars came through and over 1,000 kids. So it was incredibly successful. It's my understanding that everyone played nice, traffic-wise, and it could very well be something that we do again in the future. So Parks, Rec and Tourism did a fantastic job, and I think you had sponsors assist as well. So a really fun night, Friday night.
We ran out of candy
Oh, did
with 5 cars left.
Oh, no.
Wow. So I just wanted to make sure to give them kudos.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bring that up, Rick. Thanks for doing that. You know, there's kind of a pent-up emotion amongst the children for trick-or-treating. You know, they were, and the fact that you put it on and the number that showed up proves that they're being stressed as well as we are. So, thank you. Anything else, council? Any?
I was just going to say, tomorrow's election day. If you haven't already voted, please get out and do your civic duty and vote. And one other thing, should we have a follow-up discussion on what Walter presented on at some point, maybe in a study session, or have staff advise council on his recommendations, maybe things we might ought to do or consider?
Yeah, I think that's, I agree with Bob, and Fletcher, that's a great idea. And we're rapidly nearing, Cammie, I can't see you. You're hiding behind that monitor there.
He said not it.
You have to move up a row or something. We're probably going to have, at the next study session, a finance discussion, or am I being optimistic?
I think we have a number of get out there. When we talk about finance, we're going to have a pretty set amount of topics we're trying to capture. So I would ask for a little bit of time to kind of absorb, Walter's material. I'd recommend that we do something early, potentially as early as January, to do a more kind of holistic look at things and figure out, what kind of goals really should we set as a city to figure out, are we looking to target certain percentages, and then what kind of our overall, in very general terms, savings plan looks like, because it doesn't appear that we're going to vault from a A1 to a AAA3 in 1 year. It's going to be a kind of a campaign plan, if you will, from a financial perspective, and then so if we can kind of get everybody on the same sheet of music between staff and council, so we have a clear understanding of these are the options, and then you can kind of set some budgetary guidelines for us to consider in the out years. We can start building our budgets in that way.
Would that be a good envision topic, maybe?
I'd certainly be open to that from a staff perspective.
I think that's a good suggestion.
That way it gives staff time to research it and gives us ample time to discuss it.
Yep, no, I think that's an excellent suggestion. We'll adopt that, which now forces us to have an envision session. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow to try and figure out when to do that and how to successfully, do it in this time of challenge with social distancing and things. So good suggestion. I failed to ask you, sir, if there are any comments you wanted to make. Okay, I just didn't want to overlook the fact that you have an opportunity. Council, any other comments? Okay, it's 7:57 by my phone. Let's reconvene in the council conference room for an executive session, continuation of study session at 8:05. Is that fair? Okay, thank you very much. This meeting's adjourned.